Hello everyone. In this video, we will discuss the single sign-on feature in the Cortex XDR tenant. During this session, we will cover prerequisites, configuration of Cortex XDR SSO with Okta as the identity provider, or IDP, and group mapping. Starting with Cortex XDR 3.4, XDR administrators can set up their Cortex XDR instances to use their organization's IDP for SAML-based single sign-on. Users of the XDR instance will then have the ability to easily log in using their organization's SSO process to access the console. It is important to note that all Cortex XDR users and administrators will still have the option to use their customer support portal credentials to log in. Also, SSO is only configured at the Cortex XDR instance level, meaning it cannot be used for the Cortex gateway, and configuration is not shared between multiple tenants. Before you proceed with SSO configuration, you should ensure that you have the ability to log in as either an XDR account admin or instance administrator to the tenant you want to configure. This video also assumes that you are using Okta as your IDP. However, you can use the concepts discussed here for other IDPs, but some specific items may be different. Start by logging into your Cortex XDR instance using your CSP credentials with an account that has either the XDR account admin or instance administrator role. Turn on single sign-on by going to Settings, Configurations, and scroll to the bottom and select Single Sign-On. Click the toggle button to reveal the configuration options. Next, log into the admin portal for your Okta instance. Go to Applications and select Create App Integration, choosing SAML 2.0 as your sign-in method. Begin creating your Okta app by providing an app name and optionally providing an app logo. Click Next. From your Cortex XDR instance, you will need your single sign-on URL and audience URI. Paste these values in the appropriate boxes, including the single sign-on URL and the audience URI field. Leave the rest of these items as default, but change your application username from Okta username to email address. Next, you will need to populate your attribute statements. You can use these examples or select your own values. You should provide the user first name, last name, and email address. Optionally, you can add group attribute statements if you wish to use group mapping for role-based access control. For example, if you have groups in Okta that you want to map to roles in XDR, such as viewer or administrator roles. You should create a groups attribute and filter for your Okta groups to map. Next, scroll down and click Preview the SAML assertion to verify that your attributes are correctly mapped. Here we can see the first name, last name, email address, and groups are mapped in the assertion. Close this window and continue with the setup by clicking Next. You can select for your feedback, I am an Okta customer adding an internal app, and click Finish. Now that we've configured our app in Okta, we'll need to scroll down and click View SAML Setup Instructions to get the metadata to provide to XDR. We'll need the identity provider single sign-on URL, the identity provider issuer, and the X509 certificate. When we go back to the XDR console, we can paste these values in for the IDP SSO URL, the IDP issuer ID, and the certificate. Next, we'll need to complete the IDP mapping attributes using the values we filled in during our Okta configuration. In this example, we can see if we go to General, SAML Settings, and click Edit, we can return to our configuration screen and see that we used given name for the first name, surname for the last name, and mail for the email. We also used groups to map our groups. We'll add these values in the appropriate field within Cortex XDR. At this time, you can also choose to assign users in Okta by going to the application, clicking the Assignments tab, and clicking Assign. You can assign either people or groups. You should at least assign yourself to the application so that we can test our SSO integration. Once that's done, we'll go ahead and test by opening a new incognito window. To start testing, we'll need to visit our Cortex XDR tenant login page, which can be reached at your tenant name.xdr.yourregion.paloaltonetworks.com. If you visit this page and are redirected to the customer support portal to log in, please ensure you have properly completed the configuration for SSO in your XDR tenant and saved. When you reach this page, click on Single Sign-On with SSO to be redirected to your Okta login. Complete your Okta login to test the integration. If your sign-in is successful, you will be redirected to the Cortex XDR instance and logged in. A more advanced SSO use case is automatic role assignment, such that when a user is added to a group in Okta, the user will automatically receive a role in Cortex XDR based on that group membership. No additional work is required by the Cortex XDR administrator. This can be accomplished by performing group mapping. In Cortex XDR, create a group by going to Settings, Configurations, User Groups, and clicking New Group. In addition to giving the role a descriptive name and selecting a role for the group, you should also specify the SAML group mapping group that you will use. Let's use Cortex Administrators as our group name and click Create. We now need to create the Cortex Administrators group in our Okta. Let's go to Directory, Groups, click Add Group, and add Cortex Administrators as a group. We'll also go ahead and assign a user to this group. Now that we have created our group, we should ensure that the group mapping is configured in our SAML application. We'll go to Applications, click on our Cortex XDR application, go to General, SAML Settings, and click Edit. Click Next, and ensure that under Group Attribute Statements, you have an attribute assigned and you're filtering in a way that will include the group you just created. In this case, contains Cortex. Now that we have created this group mapping and assignment, we can perform a test login with this user to ensure that they receive the appropriate role once signed in. Because user roles are not assigned directly within the Cortex XDR console, changing a user's role is as simple as moving them to another group within Okta that is mapped in Cortex XDR. Changes will take effect the next time the user logs in. Please note, you should not use spaces or special characters in the Okta group names, as this may result in mapping errors. You can repeat this process for any other groups or roles you wish to create. A variety of problems can occur when configuring SAML-based single sign-on. Here are a few things you should check if you encounter issues. Verify your email address in Okta matches your email address in Cortex XDR by going to Settings, Configurations, and Users. Verify a role is being assigned if this is a new user, either via the default role in the Cortex single sign-on configuration or via a group mapping. If you are using group mappings to assign roles, verify your Okta group does not have spaces or special characters. Verify the complete and correct URLs have been used in each configuration option, both in Cortex XDR and Okta for your single sign-on. Single sign-on is a powerful way to reduce the number of credentials that users are required to maintain, while also being able to implement the multi-factor authentication mechanisms of your choice to guard against potential credential compromises. With this new capability, organizations can reduce the complexity of provisioning access to the Cortex XDR console while also simplifying the user login experience. We hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day.